There is a peculiar assumption that governs the way almost everyone thinks about money. It is so quiet, so unquestioned, so woven into the fabric of ordinary thought that most people spend their entire lives inside it without ever noticing it is there. The assumption is this: wealth is a quantity. That being wealthy means having a certain amount of a particular substance stored in a particular place. That if the number in the account is high enough, the person becomes wealthy. And if the number is not high enough, the person is not. This assumption feels obvious. It feels like common sense. It feels like the way the world actually works. And yet, in one very specific way, it is entirely wrong. Because wealth is not a quantity. Wealth is a quality of consciousness. It is not a number, it is a frequency. And the difference between these two ways of understanding it is the difference between spending your life reaching for something that stays permanently out of reach and quietly, immediately beginning to inhabit the very state you have been reaching for all along. I want to spend the next few minutes showing you what I mean by this, because once it truly lands within you, you will never think about money in quite the same way again. The chase will begin to fall away. The tightness around it will loosen. The exhausted reaching, which has consumed years of your life without ever quite closing the gap, will slowly and beautifully begin to end. Consider what actually happens inside a person who feels wealthy. Notice, I did not say a person who has wealth. I said a person who feels it, because the two are not the same thing, and pretending they are is one of the most persistent and painful mistakes anyone can make about their own life. The person who feels wealthy moves through the day within a particular inner climate. They are not constantly calculating. They are not anxiously monitoring every expense. They are not tightening every time a price is mentioned. They hear that something costs more than expected, and something within them simply notes it and moves on. They see something they would like, and they consider whether they truly want it, not whether they can survive spending the money. They receive an unexpected expense, and it registers as a small event rather than a personal wound. The entire machinery of scarcity that quietly runs beneath most people's lives, the constant low grade calculation, the vigilance, the flinching, is simply absent. Its absence is what wealth actually feels like from the inside. And here's the remarkable thing you need to see, because it is the crack through which the light enters. That inner climate, that absence of anxious calculation, that quiet, unbothered posture, is not the result of having money. It is the condition that allows wealth to emerge. It is the frequency upon which having money naturally operates. And that frequency is available in principle to anyone, regardless of external circumstances, the moment they stop confusing the number with the state. I know how this sounds at first. It sounds like pretending. It sounds like being told to feel rich when you are not, or to ignore the bills sitting on your table. But that is not what this is. This is not denial. This is not self-deception. This is not lying to yourself about what the account balance says. It is something far more subtle and far more powerful. You are not being asked to pretend the numbers are different. You are being invited to notice that the numbers have never been the true source of your inner climate. The tightness you feel around money is not, if you look honestly, produced by the numbers themselves. It is produced by the story you have attached to those numbers. It is produced by the identity you have carried for years. The self-concept of being someone for whom money is difficult, scarce, hard to keep, or hard to receive. That self-concept is what your inner climate is responding to. And that self-concept can change, quietly and deliberately, regardless of what the current numbers happen to be. The moment it changes, the outer conditions, faithful as ever, begin organizing themselves to match. Watch what happens in people whose relationship with money has genuinely shifted. The person who used to grip begins to soften. The person who checked their account obsessively no longer feels compelled to. The person who once tightened every time a bill arrived now receives it without the familiar contraction. What follows over the months and years is rarely one dramatic miracle. Instead, it is something quieter and, in many ways, more extraordinary. Life begins to rearrange itself. An unexpected refund appears. A raise arrives unexpectedly. An old debt is finally settled. A new opportunity opens. A client materializes. An expense that seemed inevitable disappears in a way they cannot fully explain. None of these events look spectacular by themselves. Together, they quietly transform an entire life. Not because the person forced anything on the outside, but because something fundamental shifted on the inside. The state changed, the frequency changed, and over time, life changed with it. Now consider the opposite. Think about someone who has money but never feels wealthy. You have probably met someone like this. Perhaps they even earn exceptionally well. Yet they move through every day with a constant feeling that there is never enough. The tightness remains. The calculations continue. The fear of running out never leaves. By every external measure, they have abundance. Internally, they continue living in scarcity. The number is not creating the state. The state exists independently of the number, and it is the state, not the balance, that determines the quality of their life. That alone is proof that wealth was never merely a quantity. If quantity created the feeling, every wealthy person would feel wealthy. Many do not. The frequency, not the number, is the true source. Now the teaching becomes practical, not in the form of another checklist, not through another morning ritual, not through forcing yourself to feel rich. Force only creates resistance. Instead, begin with something much smaller. Begin noticing the tiny moments when the story of scarcity quietly appears. Notice the little tightening when you see a price. Notice the calculation that happens before you even realize it. Notice the subtle flinch when another bill arrives. Do not criticize yourself. Do not force yourself to feel differently. Simply notice. There it is, the old climate, and then allow it to soften. Without performance, without pretending, without replacing it with artificial positivity. The softening itself is enough. Every genuine softening shifts the frequency just a little. Enough small softenings eventually become a completely different foundation from which you live. Money begins moving differently around someone who is softened, not because they magically attract money, but because they stop rejecting opportunities that were always present. They receive gifts without saying, "I don't need it." They accept help without insisting, "I can manage." They notice possibilities that were invisible before because their attention had been trained only to search for evidence of scarcity. Softening widens perception. A wider perception reveals opportunities that were already there. Perhaps you have experienced moments like this yourself. Times when exactly what you needed arrived unexpectedly. Times when money appeared at precisely the right moment. Times when a bill came in lower than expected. Times when something simply worked out. These moments are not merely luck. They are evidence of brief moments when your inner climate softened enough to allow life to move more freely through you. The reason you cannot force those moments is because genuine softness cannot be manufactured. Forced softness is simply another form of gripping. The, the only real shift comes when your emotional state no longer depends on the numbers. Then something extraordinary becomes possible. You become someone whose inner climate is no longer held hostage by an account balance. You become someone who can genuinely feel wealthy regardless of whether the number is temporarily high or temporarily low, because the frequency has become independent of the arithmetic, and that independence allows the arithmetic itself to begin changing. Life cannot consistently pour abundance into a container broadcasting not enough. But a container broadcasting genuine sufficiency, a quiet, settled confidence that there is enough, is naturally able to receive more without resistance. The truly wealthy are not wealthy simply because they took clever action. They are wealthy because they consistently broadcast sufficiency. Their entire inner architecture rests upon the assumption that there is enough, that more is available, that life continues flowing, that abundance is natural. Because they broadcast sufficiency, life faithfully reflects that assumption back to them through opportunities, income, relationships, solutions, and unexpected support. Nothing about this is beyond your reach. You can begin tonight, not through pretending, not through repeating affirmations in the mirror, but by quietly loosening your grip on the story of scarcity. Notice the tightening, let it soften. Walk through ordinary moments as someone whose peace is no longer determined by numbers. Allow yourself to experience, if only briefly, the quiet posture of someone for whom money is not a constant source of fear. Not because your bank account has already proven it, but because you have chosen to inhabit the frequency first. There will be a delay between changing the frequency and seeing external results. This is important because it is exactly where most people give up. The inner shift happens first. The outer world takes time to respond. The old conditions were created by years of old assumptions. They do not disappear overnight. Do not mistake the delay for failure. It is simply the natural interval between cause and visible effect. Keep living from the new frequency anyway, not as a strategy, but because it is a far better way to live. Your days will begin feeling lighter long before your bank balance changes. The background anxiety will fade. The constant calculations will quiet. The exhaustion of carrying not enough everywhere you go will slowly dissolve. And then you will discover something remarkable. You are already living more peacefully before any of the external numbers have visibly changed, because the true suffering was never created by the numbers. It was created by the state. And tonight, that state begins to change. There's one final thing I want to leave you with. Wealth as a frequency is not ultimately about money. Money is simply one expression of it. The frequency itself is much larger. It is the quiet certainty that you are supported, that there is enough, that life is not fundamentally working against you, that you will be provided for. This posture has always belonged to you. It belonged to you before fear taught you otherwise. It appeared in childhood before scarcity became a habit. It appeared in moments of love. It appeared in peaceful mornings before the day's worries began. That peace is the frequency. That peace is the wealth. Not because peace symbolizes money, but because peace is the state from which every healthy expression of abundance naturally flows. You do not have to earn this state. You do not have to deserve it. You do not have to wait until your bank account grants you permission. It has always been available. Tonight, in one quiet moment, you can begin returning to it. Not dramatically, simply by settling, by gently releasing the grip, by remembering the peace that existed before fear convinced you there was never enough. That is the practice. Return again and again to that frequency. Let the grip loosen. Let the old story become quieter. Allow yourself to live from the settled inner posture of someone who knows they are deeply held. And from that place, watch as life gradually reorganizes itself around the frequency you consistently embody. You are not chasing wealth. You are not reaching for it. You are not asking the universe to grant it. You are simply returning to what was always yours. Because wealth was never a number, it was always a frequency. And that frequency has been patiently waiting for you to remember how to tune back into it. Come back to it. Live from it. And let the numbers, in their own perfect time and in their own natural way, rise to reflect what you have already become within. If this message spoke to your heart, don't let it end here. Carry this understanding into your everyday life and return to it whenever the old story of scarcity begins to whisper again. Real transformation is not created in a single moment. It is created through the quiet choices you make every day. If you enjoy thoughtful teachings like this on consciousness, inner transformation, timeless wisdom, and the hidden principles that shape our lives, make sure you subscribe to Stories and Quotes Be and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, may your mind remain peaceful, your heart remain open, and may you continue discovering the abundance that has always lived within you. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.